Your support helps us bring you programs you love. Go to wyomingpbs.org, click on Support, and become a sustaining member or an annual member. It's easy and secure. Thank you.
In his last appearance on Wyoming PBS as governor, we'll say a fond farewell to Wyoming Governor Matt Mead. We'll reflect with the governor on his past 2 terms as Wyoming's chief executive. What went well and what were some of the tough times? And we'll ask how he and his family have changed over 8 years in the governor's residence. Governor Matt Mead, a reflection, next on Capital Outlook.
This program is supported in part by a grant from the BNSF Railway Foundation, dedicated to improving the general welfare and quality of life in communities throughout the BNSF Railway service area. Proud to support Wyoming PBS.
And in part by the Wyoming Public Television Endowment and viewers like you.
Welcome to this special Capital Outlook. I'm Craig Blumenshine from Wyoming PBS, and it's our pleasure and our privilege to be joined by Governor Matt Mead. Governor, welcome.
Thank you, Craig. Good to see you again.
The days of your being chief executive are waning. We're shooting this right before Christmas, of course. Is this a bittersweet time for you?
Well, it is. I mean, Carol and I, have had time to reflect, and we think about what a privilege it's been to be in this job for 8 years. The people that we've got to meet, the great staff, hopefully things we've accomplished. But we're also looking forward to the next chapter. I mean, it's a busy job. You're always busy, and we have a ranching interest in Albany County, and looking forward to spending time out there. But it'll be, just one of the greatest things I'll ever get to do in my life is to serve the state in this way. So it is. There is a bittersweet part of it, but 8 years is good. We're good.
Are there some issues, Governor, you wish you maybe had a little more time with, instead of being maybe 4th down, it was just 3rd down?
Yeah, well, there's a couple. One is I wish we would have gotten started on Dow earlier, and I don't have a reason why that was.
And this is your program to
diversify the economy. Mm-hmm. I wish we would have got that started, because just in the short time it's been going on, I've seen the progress, I've seen the hope, and I'm really encouraged by that. The other area where and we started early on this, and we worked, that I just don't think we've moved the needle like I would have liked to, is on health care. It's a challenge in rural states, and particularly it's a challenge in Wyoming, these high health care costs we have. And I think as we diversify the economy, if you don't take care of health care, it's going to be problematic. So I think that's been a challenge. And we've obviously, as you know, we tried a thing or two and it didn't work out. But I'm worried about health care for Wyoming.
What are you thinking, Governor, as you plan to move forward? How have those conversations went with you and your family? You have opportunities to go back to the ranch. How have the discussions went? Can you let us in?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's sort of the professional side, what did we accomplish and what did we wish we would have accomplished on the job, the substantive matters. And then there's the private side. You saw our kids when we first came in office, they were little kids. And now they're both at the University of Wyoming. And, as in the nature of this job, you miss some stuff as a parent. And there's no catching up. You don't go back and do it again. And so that's the other thing as we reflect, have we missed some stuff with our kids that we'll regret that. But we also know our kids have gotten, they can go in any room and they're good handshakers, better than I am. And we're proud of them and the way that they've handled this. So we think that all in all, it's been a good experience for them. And
what are they telling you about heading back to the ranch?
Well, I think especially probably the last couple of years, they're ready for me to have more time to do some stuff with them, and they love being at the ranch, and they love not having every weekend sort of a half of a weekend or a quarter of a weekend, and so I think they're looking forward to it. And as I told them, I said, we're going to be close by university, so we'll come and stay the night in your dorm, and they, of course,
they'll love that. You bet.
Right. So it's good. I think we're in a good place as a family now, moving on, and But I know not only Carol and I, but the kids have had some amazing experiences they would not have otherwise had, and we're very grateful for that.
I know that in the recent gubernatorial campaign and in many campaigns, candidates often say it changes them a little bit. In reflection, Governor, how have you changed in the last 8 years?
I think I have changed. Of course, you hopefully get better at the job every year with the experience, but I think I've changed also as a person. I think that, I came into this job that my profession largely was as a prosecutor, which was, there's this and there's that. And I think this experience has, broadened me in that I think that I am more open to hearing diverse ideas, and I think that's one of the things you have to do in this job is you got to be willing to hear from people you completely disagree with. I think you have to be willing to read the newspaper, direct criticism of you, and not just say, well, that person is wrong because they're criticizing, but say, what do I learn from that? I mean, is there something in there that I should learn from that? And I think that's just a process that has happened for me during my 8 years. And I think that's been helpful to be able to hear criticism and not dismiss it because it's critical, and to be open to ideas that are completely foreign to your own.
You haven't been unwilling to change your opinion.
I have been able to change my opinion, and of course we know in this world sometimes anytime you change your mind, that's criticism. But I think that's part of this job, I think, is being practical and responding to the circumstances and trying to find the best way forward. And it may not be your perfect choice, but you have to keep your eye on the ball, which is what is in the best interest of the people in Wyoming.
Governor, I have a list of topics that I want to ask you how your thinking has evolved. How your thoughts have changed and maybe whether they've changed. And the top of everyone's list is Medicaid expansion. Originally, it's something that you didn't think was a great idea for Wyoming, but your thoughts on that certainly have changed.
Yeah, as we've done this, when I was campaigning in 2010, I put together a list of, here's issues that I want to address, and here's issues where I think we're headed in the right way or maybe in the wrong direction. And one of those was the ACA, Obamacare. And I said in my paper when I was campaigning, I think this is wrong, and I don't think it passes legal muster. And so I think it was the first lawsuit out of the box. We sued on that and we lost. And after losing, I thought, well, we've lost. That is the law of the land. Now how do we make the best of it for Wyoming? And that's when I started asking the legislature to consider expanding Medicaid. And I think it's become even more prevalent as we look at the money the state has said we don't want, as we look at the people who are not getting health care in an appropriate way, instead using, for example, the emergency room. And so I lost 2 years on that, and that's where we are now. And I think it's unfortunate because where I started was I didn't like the law. I didn't think it was going to pass legal muster. We were one of the states that sued and we lost. And so I thought it was in the best interest of Wyoming to make good on what the law was, particularly for those who are struggling to get health care.
And you mentioned just a moment ago how serious of an issue health care is in this state.
It is.
What do you see? What do you see in the next few years?
I think there's going to be some incremental improvements. I think we have expanded broadband in the state exponentially in 8 years, which is one of my priorities. And I think with the advancement of telemedicine, telehealth, I think there's opportunities to improve access. But I also know that we're going to face challenges outside of cost, which is we have this bleed over effect into the surrounding states that have larger medical facilities, and we travel to those to get health care. And the more we do that, there will be a tipping point where you want to go get primary care, see an OB/GYN, back surgery. Those people are not going to be here. And so it's going to be a challenge for the next administration and probably for the next few administrations. But I think that if we have an opportunity in the state to, again, look at expansion, it is still the law. I think that would be helpful to the state. I understand that may not happen, but we have to recognize that health care isn't just a health care issue. It's an economic issue. It's a quality of life issue. And we tout our quality of life in Wyoming, and I think we should, but healthcare is a big part of that we need to address.
To stay on the topic just briefly, for a long time, as you know, I lived in Riverton, and I've watched now the last year the community perceive that it's lost health care. essentially, from the services available from its hospital, and now make the decision to build its own hospital. I asked the question, or to at least begin the process of seeing whether they can build their own hospital, and I asked that question because do you worry that a lot of services in Wyoming are going to become centered in 2 or 3 of the more population-centered areas?
Well, I think I think that is partly the trend because economies of scale, right? If you have some economies of scale, you can save money and you can recruit doctors and nurses, and I think that is naturally going to be the trend. But for rural Wyoming, if you don't have health care in some of our small communities, those communities are going to struggle to survive because our kids are going to get broken arms, our spouses are going to have issues, and to say that to live in Wyoming you got to load up and drive 100 or 150 miles to attend to those things, that's just not, to me, that's just not good for Wyoming.
The Endow Group, Governor, posted a few months ago, and I asked the incoming governor this question as well, that it sees maybe by 2038 2 Wyoming communities with a population of 100,000. Is that what you see?
I think that's inevitable. I do. I think Cheyenne has got almost this tipping point that is outside of dependence on minerals. I mean, minerals are a part of it, but we're also seeing influx from Colorado, the Front Range. I think it's going to continue to grow. I think Casper will continue to grow. So that wouldn't surprise me at all that we see 2 communities in excess of 100,000, probably even before then. And my idea on Dow isn't to grow population, it's to grow opportunities. Because as we talk about expanding our economic opportunities in the state of Wyoming, I still get pushback, well, that's good, but we don't want to become Denver, or we don't want to become Salt Lake or Billings. And I get that.
Or I think as we've talked about before, and I'm curious if you've heard this more and more, we don't want to change at all. We like it this way.
Well, I have heard that, and it's. I'm making up a story here, but you'll hear from the same person. I don't want any change, but my granddaughter can't find a job, and so I think that as Wyoming has, I think, a unique ability to do because of our small nature. I think we can grow and change in a way that still suits us, and still we have what we value in Wyoming, the opportunities in recreation and open space and hunting and clean air and clean water. I don't think, if population was just the answer, California would never be in a recession, right? So it's not a population goal, it's an opportunity goal. So we're forcing kids to stay here. But if they choose to stay here, they can have a meaningful career for themselves and their families.
As we speak, your supplemental budget is being posted online, literally. It's coming available. And one of the things that you talk about is the need to find stable funding for education in Wyoming.
Yeah.
How has your thinking about education funding evolved?
So as we look at the budget, and I don't know what amount you've seen, but we're heading into this in a pretty good shape on the government operations side. I want to point out that this budget that we're submitting combined with the budget last year is smaller than it was my first year in office. We have fewer people. Our savings has grown, both permanent savings and our rainy day funds almost doubled in size. So government operation, and we're going to leave about $300 million. We've reduced rules and executive orders. I think we've created efficiencies there. The challenge is clearly on the education side, and depending upon who you talk to, numbers differ between $300 to $500 million deficiency every year. And so, as you may know in my budget, I have recommended, as has joint appropriations and joint education, the ECA for our teachers.
Which is an external cost adjustment.
External cost adjustment, thank you. I've been in government too long, I'm using these. But we have to find a solution for education funding. And it cannot be just keep taking from the government side, because nursing homes or elderly or prisons, that cannot be the answer. And so that's where you get into where we're going to find the additional revenue. I think diversifying our economy is going to help, but that doesn't pay the bills next year. That is a longer term vision.
And you and I have talked about necessarily more jobs outside of the energy sector.
Yes.
Maybe actually problematic for a longer term tax structure that supports education.
Yeah, I think it's as you I mean, the simple formula sometimes, the more people you bring, the more cost it is to the state of Wyoming, and so you have to figure out the tax base. I think that is true. I think we have to have a tax structure as we bring in businesses outside of energy. We have to have a tax structure that, helps pay for our schools, helps pay for our education. Otherwise, we're just continuing to rely too heavily, in my mind, on the mineral industry. And I think also what has also happened is we see the good news on revenue, and people are like, well, we've dodged a bullet. But I would say we have not dodged a bullet because we are facing this deficit in education. And as good as the revenue picture looks from the October revenue estimating group, it's still 56% less than our all-time revenue high.
Yeah, I saw that statistic this morning.
We're better, but cautiously better, and we've got a long way to go to get out of what was, one of the worst economic setbacks the state's ever had.
You came in literally with no experience in working with the legislature.
Right. Well, I want to correct you. I interned when I was in high school.
Okay, there you go. So you were on the floor even, probably.
I was on the floor limited time to pick up a note or two.
But you've changed in how you, I think, have worked with the legislature over your 8 years. Give us some insight into Matt Mead in 2011 and Matt Mead today in relationship with the Wyoming legislature.
I think it's, the one is I came in, this hasn't changed. I came in with a respect for the legislature, recognizing as men and women who really are there to serve. You're going to have people that you completely disagree with and people that you agree with more often than not. And what I think I got better at over the years is recognizing, I would think, hey, this is a great idea, and it got shot down, or this is a great idea, and that by the time it comes out, it looks completely different. And that was a source of frustration for me. But what I think I got better at, and I think the legislature got more comfortable with me, is let's talk about this. And the more you can talk about it, with the door closed and figure out their point of view, I think the better you can get. And the legislature always changes because it is a citizen legislature, and so they have to know how the governor works and how he or she is making decisions, and the same for the governor. But you have different people in different seats, and you need to have an opportunity to learn about them.
Our nation right now is mourning the death of President George H.W. Bush, Bush 41. You've met him.
I have. I've met him a couple of times, and of course, as George W. Bush's son appointed me U.S. Attorney, but I have nothing but great admiration for him. The first time I saw him, I was in college in Texas, and he gave a speech. But
this is when you were working the overnight shift, being the DJ, and we can get to that in a minute if you'd like.
As you know, I was a terrible DJ, but I saw him. He was at an event at the University of Wyoming with Dick Cheney, and I was U.S. Attorney at the time, and I was standing sort of in this little, almost an alley underneath the stadium. And I was standing back there with some sheriff's deputies, and we're actually standing around a dumpster. And I was waiting to go in a different way to be one of many to see the President Bush there. And the Secret Service drove him down the alley in the black Suburbans, and as soon as he got out, they were sort of grabbed him to usher him in. And he looked out the side of his eye, and he saw those deputies over there. And he made a point of leaving, where he was being told to go, and come shake those deputies' hands. There's no cameras. There's just the deputies there, and it struck me because I think that's indicative of the type of guy he was. He was a true American and cared about those people in a way that wasn't for publicity, wasn't for politics. He genuinely cared for people, and so I just have nothing but admiration for him.
Being remembered as someone who really believed in civility.
He did.
Governor, I think you can be put in that category. Why has that been so important to you?
Well, thank you. I hope that is true. And Wyoming is a small state, and I learned from my parents and grandparents, you just don't get very far when you're taking shots at people, and it's just not the way to get things done. And particularly in Wyoming, I will be on the other side of an issue on day one, and on day two, we may be partners on addressing an issue. And I think it's more important than ever now because our system of government requires people to step up. We want women and men to step up into office. And if it looks like to do so is just going to be, you're just going to be vilified by everybody, and your family's going to be under attack. Who's going to step up? I mean, it's naive, but I would like every fourth grader to think about wanting to get into politics in some form, because without great people stepping up, our system's going to fail.
You said something in the past that you're in politics, but don't really consider yourself a politician. Is that true? And are you a little more comfortable in that role now, for sure?
I am not a good politician in this. I mean, I meet people who are living and breathing polls and watch every race, and I don't do that. And even on, to me, it's issue oriented. I mean, here's an issue. How do we work on that so we find a solution that's best for Wyoming?
Governor Sullivan also talked about how this job, people just don't realize, is 24/7. You've described yourself as a world-class worrier,
yeah.
I think, and that your wife has recognized that.
Yeah.
Has that been harder for you?
It is. I mean, I've gotten, when the phone rings at an odd hour, where's the fire? Are we going to get bad news from overseas with one of our National Guard members? What has happened? And I think that is by the nature of the job, as Governor Sullivan said it. It's ongoing matters of the state are 24/7, and on any hour, any minute, you may get notification that something has blown up, and so it does no good to worry about it, but I do worry about it, and I think that's the job. I mean, I think if you're not worrying about Wyoming all the time, you're probably not in the right job.
You've paid great respect to the men and women who serve in the Wyoming National Guard. You see them off and you welcome them home.
It's one of the great privileges of this job, beyond my expectations. I mean, those men and women are so amazing, and I wish I could better articulate to the people of Wyoming what they do, with natural disasters. And those send-offs, Craig, I mean, I get emotional about it because you see these young mothers kissing an infant goodbye as they're headed to Afghanistan. And at 4 a.m, they're saying goodbye, and it tugs at your heartstrings. And they raise their right hand, and they volunteer for this. And so, the Guard and the military, that has been just a great privilege to see great Americans.
You've actually visited Wyoming's Guard overseas.
Yeah, we've been to Afghanistan and Cuba and Kosovo and Qatar and a number of different places, and it's a joy because I remember serving Thanksgiving dinner in Bahrain, and they're grateful you're there, but it's a great joy for us because one is they just are respected wherever they go. Our Guard does such an amazing job. So that has been. I was at a governor's conference last week, and I gave a few pieces of advice for incoming governors, and I said, one thing you got to do is pay attention to the Guard and the military and our vets, because it means a lot to them, but more importantly, it's just one of the great privileges of the job.
What are you most proud of, Governor, in these last 8 years?
Well, I think I've tried to be very proactive, on energy and energy strategy and water, endangered species, broadband connectivity, the integrated test center. I've tried to address issues that are not, I guess, normally addressed by some, as suicide has been, homeless issues have been. But I'm proud that I've tried to work hard every day and keep Wyoming at the forefront. I've tried not to be, as I said in my first inaugural, I'm not a governor for Republicans or governor for Democrats. I'm a governor for everybody in the state of Wyoming. And my door's been open to all parties, and I've learned a lot from those people that have come in, and I've been willing to work with people that I agree with and disagree with. And then on the personal front, I'm happily married, and I have wonderful kids.
Governor, this is airing just a few days before Christmas. What would a Christmas message be from you to the folks here in Wyoming?
Well, one is just recently we did a Hanukkah ceremony at the governor's residence, and regardless of religion, I hope we all take time to recognize how blessed we are to live in Wyoming. and that as we sit down with joy with our family and friends during this season, keep a remembrance of our men and women who are overseas, for those that are less fortunate than us. And let's start the new year after this time of holiday celebration with hope and optimism and gladness that we live in Wyoming.
What are any Mead family Christmas traditions that you can share with us?
Well, we do have one. I'm not quite sure how it got started, but we have on Christmas Eve, the kids and Carol and I each open one gift. Christmas Eve now is anything beyond 10 o'clock in the morning, so it's moved back over the years.
Kids will do that to you, sure.
And that is fun. But the biggest thing I think is the tradition is that the gifts and all that is great, but it's the meal afterwards and just making sure we.
Who cooks?
Actually, Carol does most of the cooking, but she lets me do sort of the meat, which means that I get to burn something on a grill.
Are you a Traeger guy?
I've had a Traeger. I've got a big stick smoker now. I've done deep fried, nearly setting things on fire. I've done it all. But that's one of the things I enjoy, and Carol is very tolerant in letting me try new things. So,
well, Governor, it's been a pleasure for us to always have an opportunity to visit with you. I know, and I have shared this with you before, I don't think that all governors are as welcoming as you are to not just us, but to everyone. And
well, thank you, Craig. It's been a pleasure, and I do appreciate you taking time to do this. As you and I have talked in the past, one of the challenges of governors, how do you have an opportunity to talk about what you're working on and what you're thinking, and this really provides a great platform, so we're grateful.
from all of us, Governor, best wishes on your future.
Thanks, Greg.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
This program is supported in part by a grant from the BNSF Railway Foundation, dedicated to improving the general welfare and quality of life in communities throughout the BNSF Railway service area. Proud to support Wyoming PBS.
And in part by the Wyoming Public Television Endowment and viewers like you.